मग तिच्यामुळे लाईन नाही लागत का की ती कशी येते नक्की?
Students, we are beginning with Science Part 1, Chapter 8. Metallurgy, right? In this chapter, we are learning about the physical properties of metals, chemical properties of metals, physical and chemical properties of non-metals, what is metallurgy, various concepts regarding metallurgy, reactivity series of metals and ionic compounds. So let us begin first with combustion of metal. Okay, what is meant by combustion of metal, right? Now for this, there is a short activity for you students. You have to take pair of tongs or spatula, knife, burner, etc. Okay, and the chemicals needed are samples of aluminium, copper, iron, lead, magnesium, zinc, and sodium. Any one of these samples you can take. Okay. What is the procedure for the experiment? You have to hold the sample of each of the above metals at the top of the flame of a burner with the help of a pair of tongs or a spatula. Okay, so either you can take aluminium or copper or iron or sodium, whichever metal you want, you can hold in a spatula, okay, on the top of the flame of the burner with what? With a pair of tongs as shown in the diagram. Okay, I hope PPT is visible to all of you students. Yes, so in this experiment, after doing this experiment, you have to observe certain things, right? Like which metal catches the fire readily. Now in this experiment, I have taken, suppose if I'm taking, you have to keep on changing the metal and check which metal is catching the fire readily. That means I want the answer using the public chat. What do you feel, students? I want the answer from you first, then I will share my answer with you. Okay. Okay, students. First of all, tell me what is meant by combustion. Any of you? What is meant by combustion? Burning. Okay. Or heating and or burning of a substance is called combustion, right? Examples like aluminium, sodium. Okay. So many metals here, different metals you're taking, and you're burning using a burner. So what is the first question given? Which metal catches fire readily? So here, yes, Neha, you are right. It is sodium. Sodium is the metal which catches fire readily. Okay. sodium and potassium. These are the, actually potassium we are not taken, but sodium and potassium are very highly reactive metal. That's why it catches fire very readily. Understood? How does the surface of the metal appears on catching fire? Can you tell me how it will be appearing? Black. Very good, Vidhi. It will be appearing blackish. You burn a metal and check the color. It will be always blackish, right? So the black color will appear on the surface of that metal, right? So here we are actually taking the powder of metal, so that powder will turn blackish. Okay, even if you will take aluminium or copper or sodium, whatever you take, it will turn blackish. So what is the color of the flame when you're burning it? The flame's color also changes. Yes, Neha, right? It is bluish. What is the color of the flame? It will turn to blue color. Okay. Now, why this happens? Because the metal shows reaction. There is reaction taking place in the metal. So, reaction of metals is the next topic which we are learning. For that, this short activity was given to you. Okay. Now, here you can see that when metals combine with oxygen in the air, what is formed? Metal oxides are formed. Okay, now you told me sodium is a metal which catches fire readily, right? Because sodium is very reactive metal, that's why it catches fire, right? It combines with oxygen in the air at room temperature also. Okay, so you should be very careful while using sodium. You should use it in the presence of teacher, or and it should be kept properly, right? So it should be kept, it should not get exposed to air, otherwise it will catch fire. So to prevent the accident, what you can do, you can keep it in the kerosene. Okay, so sodium metal will combine with oxygen in the air at room temperature and form sodium oxide. Chemical formula goes in this way: 4Na plus O2 gives 2Na2O, that is sodium oxide. Okay, so Na2O further reacts with water and forms sodium hydroxide. So Na2O plus H2O will give 2NaOH, that is sodium hydroxide. Similarly, magnesium will form magnesium oxide. If you are taking aluminium, it will form aluminium oxide. Copper will form copper oxide. Iron will form iron oxide. Okay, zinc will form zinc oxide. Lead will form lead oxide. In this way, all the metals reacts with oxygen in the air, forming what? Oxides of that metal. And further it will react with water to form hydroxide of the metal. Okay, so for example, magnesium will react with oxygen in the air to form magnesium oxide. The same magnesium oxide will again react with water to form magnesium hydroxide. And that is what I want to say about the reaction of metals with oxygen. Now, reaction of metals with water. If you're taking with water, see the next slide, how it occurs. What you have to take, which all apparatus you need? You need beaker. Okay, beakers are needed. Then you need some samples of metals, various metals of your choice you can take. You can take sodium metal, but you cannot take sodium metal here because you are reacting with water. So with water it will blast. So sodium cannot take. So you can take some other metal like aluminium or copper, anything like that way, and drop it on a piece of this metal in separate beakers filled with cold water. Okay, you should take cold water. Now tell me, which metal will react with water? Suppose if you are taking sodium also, suppose if you are taking, which will react with water here. If I am giving you sodium, aluminium, copper, potassium, calcium, etc., which metal will react with water? Okay, students, can you tell me answers? Okay. Arya is telling calcium. Very good, Arya Pallav. Calcium will react with water. What else? That is important note given, because sodium metal actually we are not taking, but if suppose it is taken, it will react very fast with water. Okay, so you can write three answers: sodium, potassium and calcium. These are the three metals which react with water. Okay, can you tell me which metal will float on in water? Which metal will float in water? Is it sodium, potassium, or calcium? Calcium. Very good, Neha. Calcium will float in water, right? So this is how it happens, right? So now here in the diagram, you can see, see metal sample is kept inside the test tube. Okay, and there is a glass wool soaked in the water that you should use it. Okay, burner should be there, stand, cork, hydrogen gas is liberated, and that gas is collected in the inverted test tube, which is held inside the water. Okay, you can see bubbles of gases coming out of hydrogen gas. Okay, so what happens here, sodium and potassium, they react very rapidly and vigorously with water. And what is liberated here? Hydrogen gas is liberated. So the reaction goes in this way: 2Na plus 2H2O gives 2NaOH plus H2 plus heat. That means sodium reacts with water to form sodium hydroxide and hydrogen gas. Similarly, potassium will react with water to form potassium hydroxide and hydrogen gas, and heat is liberated. Whereas if you take calcium, calcium will react very slowly and less vigorously. Compared to sodium and potassium, calcium is less reactive. So it will react very slowly. Hydrogen gas is of course released here also, and it gets collected on the surface of the metal, and it in the form of what? Bubbles. And the metal will float on water. As you told me, calcium will be floating in water. Okay. So you can say even metals like aluminum, iron, zinc. What about their reaction? They do not react with water, cold, or maybe cold water or hot water. That's why you can use aluminum for cooking and all. Iron, aluminum, zinc, all these things will not react with water, but they will react with steam to form oxides. Okay, and hydrogen gas is released in this reaction. So Al plus H2O will give Al2O3, that is aluminum oxide. Similarly, Fe plus H2O will give Fe3O4 plus H2. Okay, so everywhere you can see hydrogen gas is released. Zinc Zn plus H2O will give ZnO plus H2. That is zinc oxide plus hydrogen. So this is how a reaction of metal takes place with water. Okay, now next we are moving to the next reaction, that is reaction of metals with oxygen. Okay, where you are using dilute acid, right? So that's why I written here reaction of metal with dilute acid. So we have studied about metals with acids in the previous chapter. You know metals are very reactive. So you can take samples of aluminium, magnesium, iron or zinc, whatever you need. And then you can take dilute sulfuric acid or hydrochloric acid. Okay, any one of the concentrated acid you have to take. Or you can even take chloride salt of metals. Okay, so all these things are needed, and hydrogen gas is liberated and salt of the metal is formed as a byproduct. So the reactivity of these metals, how it goes: magnesium is much more reactive than aluminum is much more reactive than zinc, and zinc is much more reactive than iron. So the magnesium salt will be formed first. Okay, so in the diagram you can see a test tube held by a stand. That in the test tube, what you're taking? Hydrochloric acid or sulfuric acid. Okay, dilute one you can take, and then zinc granules you can add in it. You will find that bubbles of hydrogen gas is liberated. You can refer page number 95 of your textbook for the labelings. Okay, then a delivery tube is also there. Okay, delivery tube is a bent tube which gives us the gases. Okay, the whatever gas is evolved, that is hydrogen gas is evolved in the test tube, that will come out through the delivery tube and enter soap solution. You have to take a soap solution in the next in a beaker and keep it near that test tube stand. Okay, and when you will pass this hydrogen gas, what happens? The bubbles are evolved, and these bubbles are nothing but soap bubbles, because it is a soap solution, and hydrogen gas, when it is passed, bubbles are formed. And bring a lighted candle near it. what you'll find that hydrogen gas starts burning with crackling noise. Okay, so it is a really good experiment where you will find a crackling noise when this gases comes out and when you will hold a candle, lighted candle. Okay, so the reaction goes in this way: magnesium Mg plus 2HCl, that is hydrochloric acid, reacts to form magnesium chloride MgCl2 plus hydrogen. Similarly, aluminium reacts with hydrogen chloride to form aluminium chloride. So in this way, iron and zinc also forms the iron chloride and zinc chloride. So the reactions are also given, so that in one or two reactions you should remember, right? Next is reaction with nitric acid. Similarly, nitric acid also you can react with metals. So nitrate salts of metals are formed here. Okay, like N2O, NO, NO2. So these all are what oxides of nitrogen that is formed in the that is also formed with the concentric nitric acid. So the reaction is Cu plus HNO3 will give CuNO3 twice plus 2NO2 plus water. That is, copper reacts with concentrated nitric acid to form copper nitrate, nitrogen dioxide gas and water. If you are taking dilute nitric acid, copper will form copper nitrate, nitric oxide and water. Okay. Now there is a solution called aqua regia, which is very corrosive and fuming liquid. Okay, so it is one of the few reagents which can dissolve the noble metals. You know, noble metals like gold and platinum. So aqua regia will dissolve gold and platinum, and it is prepared, freshly prepared. How? By mixing hydrochloric acid and concentrated nitric acid. So you have to take 3:1, 3:1. That is 3. If we are taking 3 part of concentrated hydrochloric acid, to that you have to add 1 part of concentrated nitric acid. Then you will get aqua regia. Okay, so that is the importance of aqua regia. Next, reaction of metals with salts of other metals. Okay, now here there is a you can see the diagram which shows the reaction of metals with solution of salts of other metals. How the experimental setup will be: what all apparatus you need: a copper wire, iron nail, beaker, or big test tube you can take. Okay, then chemicals needed are aqueous solution of ferrous sulfate and copper sulfate. So these are the two solutions which we have to take. What you have to do, how you will start the experiment: you have to take a clean copper wire, right, and a clean iron nail as shown in the diagram. Okay, dip the copper wire in ferrous sulfate solution and iron nail in copper sulfate solution. So in this way you should dip the both the things in a solution of particular metal, right, and keep on observing continuously at a fixed interval of time. In which test tube does the reaction takes place? You have to check in which test tube the reaction will be taking place. Is it in the first test tube or the second, copper sulfate or ferrous sulfate? Okay. Then you have to recognize what is how the reaction takes place and what is the type of the reaction. Okay. Now here what we have to check, you have to check the reactivity of the metal. You have to first check whether copper is more reactive or iron is more reactive. So according to the reactivity series, which I am going to teach you now, reactivity series means what? It is series where metals are arranged in the form of highly reactive metals will be arranged first, right? So here in this experiment, what you can say, iron is displaced by copper forming copper sulfate. That means what? Iron is more reactive than copper. So where the reaction takes place first? The second test, which on the right side, the test tube which is there, where ferrous sulfate solution is there. There the reaction will start first. Okay, because iron will what do? Iron will displace copper from copper sulfate. Iron is very reactive, so iron will displace copper, and metallic iron being more reactive than metallic copper. So from this, what you can say, that displacement reaction is taking place. Which reaction is taking place here, students? Displacement reaction, right? So here, what scientists have studied, they have developed reactivity series. Okay, many experiments they are conducted on this displacement reaction. So metals are, how metals are arranged? They are arranged either in increasing or decreasing order of reactivity, which is called as reactivity series of metals, right? You can look at the diagram given in page number 97, where reactivity series of metals are given. Yeah, okay, so there you can see that potassium, sodium, lithium, and calcium, they react with water, very highly react with water. Which are the metals which, that means what, higher? Okay, reactivity is very high. As you go down, the reactivity is lower. Then magnesium, aluminum, zinc, iron, tin, and lead. These are the metals which are reacting with acids as well as water, right? But acids, they are mainly reacting with acids. Whereas copper, mercury, and silver, they react with oxygen, and the gold is reactivity is very least. So how you can say that the metals are divided into how many groups? Three groups. First is what? Highly reactive metals. Second is moderately reactive metal. And the third is less reactive metals. So this is how the metals react. Okay. So I hope this is much more clear to you now, students. Okay. So students, now next is reaction of metals with non-metals. Okay. Now how the metals react with non-metals? You know, metals are having the property to react because they are highly reactive. Now there are noble gases like helium, neon, argon, right? So how these reaction takes place? Okay, let us study that. They do not actually take part in any of the chemical reaction. Okay, so what we can say, we can say that the reaction of metals, uh, we have seen that the reaction of metals, that cations are formed by oxidation of metals. So whenever metals react, cations are formed, right? So you know what are cations and anions, right? So cations are formed, and if you look into the configuration, electronic configuration of metals and non-metals, what you can say that there is a driving force behind a reaction to attain certain configuration of nearest noble gas. Okay, so they need the noble gas, nearest noble gas. They should fill their octet. Okay, so that's why metals do this by how? Losing the electrons. They will lose the electrons, and non-metals, what they will do? They will gain the electrons. So whenever a metal reacts with non-metal, actually what happens? The metals will keep on losing the electrons, and the non-metals will accept the electrons, right? So because metals always gives the electrons, right? So the outermost shell of noble gas will become complete, and that's why they are called as chemically inert. Note it down. Why these noble gases are chemically inert? Because the outermost orbit is always complete. Okay. So in your last standard, that is in your 9th standard, you have studied about sodium chloride. If you remember, I don't know. Sodium metal always gives one electron to non-metal, that is chlorine. Okay. And chlorine will take that one electron. You remember that one? Okay. And the reaction goes how? 2Na plus Cl2 gives 2NaCl. And what is formed? Metal with non-metal. Metal is sodium, non-metal is chlorine. So metal plus non-metal gives what is salt. Whenever metal reacts with non-metal, what is formed? Salt is formed. Sodium plus chlorine. So salt is what? Ionic compound. That is what? Ionic compound. Okay. Similarly, you can take magnesium. Okay. Magnesium, or you can take potassium, right? Okay. All these things you can take. So any of the metal you can combine with non-metal and check, always ionic compounds are formed. So now let us see about the non-metals, how the chemical properties of non-metals are. Non-metals is nothing but they are collection of elements, as you know, right? So they are having the similar properties, similarity in physical and chemical properties. They are very electronegative. Okay, they accept the electrons, so they are electronegative. Metals electropositive. That means what? They are giving the electron. So they are some chemical reactions take place with non-metal and oxygen. Okay, so generally non-metals will combine with oxygen to form what? Acidic oxides. In some cases, neutral oxides are also formed. Right? Let us take example of carbon. As you know, carbon is a non-metal. Okay, Carbon is a non-metal, you all know, right? So carbon reacts with oxygen, okay, and forms what? Carbon dioxide, that is acidic in nature. Then carbon with, yeah, during combustion, okay, if complete combustion takes place, what happens? You will get acidic carbon dioxide. Again, similarly, carbon, if we're reacting with oxygen and partial combustion is taking place, that means what? You will get carbon monoxide, which is neutral. Okay? And if you are taking sulfur with oxygen, if you're heating, combustion of sulfur with oxygen will give sulfur dioxide. Again, it is acidic in nature. Right? So, in some cases, neutral oxides are formed. That means what? Sometimes you will get acidic oxides, basic oxides, and in some cases, neutral oxides also. Right? Then what about reaction of non-metal with water? How the non-metals react with water? Now you know about chlorine. Chlorine will react with water. Okay, so it forms what? HOCl. Okay, so hydroxide chloride, that is non-metals. Actually, they will not react except halogens will react. All the non-metals will not react with water. Okay, but chlorine, fluorine, bromine, iodine, these all halogens and they can react with water. Chlorine on dissolving in water will give the reaction like Cl2 plus H2 will give HOCl plus HCl. So this is how the fluorine reacts. Now reaction of dilute acid with non-metal, if you're taking dilute acid, like for example non-metals, they will not react with dilute acid. But halogens are exceptional case here. So halogens are having the property to form the dilute acid. For example, hydrogen bromide. Chlorine will react with dilute hydrobromic acid, okay, and forms hydrogen chloride and bromine. So the reaction will be Cl2 plus 2HBr gives 2HCl plus Br. Okay. Next, fourth is reaction of non-metal with hydrogen. How it reacts with hydrogen? So non-metals react with hydrogen under certain conditions, like there should be proper temperature, pressure should be maintained, catalyst should be used. Okay, so all these things should be there. Then only the non-metals can react with hydrogen. Okay, so for example, sulfur, if you're taking S plus H2 gives H2S, hydrogen sulfide. Nitrogen, if you're taking N2 plus 3H2 gives 2NH3, that is ammonia. So in this way, all the non-metals react with hydrogen under certain conditions. Okay, so fine. So that is about the chemical properties of non-metals. I hope this much all of you understood what are the physical and chemical properties of metals, non-metals, their reactivity. Okay, fine. Now we are going to study about ionic compounds. What are these ionic compounds? Okay. Okay, students. So can you tell me how these ionic compounds are formed? What are the two main things which is needed in to form an ionic compound? Cation, very good, Kushi, and anion, very good, very good. Okay, thank you, Neeraj, thank you, Kushi. So these are the two things which we need. That is, cation and anion are needed to form the ionic compound. Actually, what happens? There is an electrostatic force of attraction taking place between cation and anion. Okay, so the compounds formed by cation and anion are called ionic compounds. In this way, you can define it. And an electrostatic force of attraction takes place between these oppositely charged ions. Okay, and what is formed? A bond called ionic bond is formed. Okay, now what are the general properties of these ionic compounds? Anybody give the answers using the public chat? Crystalline in nature. Okay, Kushi, they are crystalline in nature. Very good. What else? Yes, Neeraj, crystalline in nature, right? What else you know about ionic compounds? Smooth and shiny. Okay, fine. What else? Okay, fine. So I will explain it. Wait. Any other answer? Definite shape is there. Okay, fine, Neeraj. Okay, fine. So these ionic compounds are crystalline solids. Crystalline means what? Shiny in appearance. Like a crystal, it looks like a crystal. It is having a definite shape. It is hard. Okay, and they are generally brittle. That means it breaks as it falls down on the ground. It will break. These compounds will break into small powder. Okay, and when if you apply any pressure, also it can break. You can break it with your fingers. You can break these ionic compounds with your fingers if you apply the pressure on it, and it will break into small pieces. Okay, so that is how. And what about the melting and boiling points? It is very high. Ionic compounds needs very high is having very high melting and boiling points, and they are soluble in water, but they are insoluble in kerosene and petrol. If you put some kerosene or petrol on these ionic compounds, these compounds will not dissolve in this petrol or kerosene. Whereas if you take water, these compounds are easily soluble in water. And then next important property is that they're good conductors of electricity. Okay, so if you add water, you will take molten ionic compound, or you can take aqueous solution of ionic compound. What you can find that electricity can pass through it. That means what? They're good conductors of heat and electricity. Okay, so I hope you understood what are ionic compounds and what are the properties of ionic compounds, right? Now let us learn about the minerals and ores. You know what are minerals, what are ores? Okay, from where we are getting the metals? Metals are extracted from their ores, right? So metals, you know, the compounds of metals occur in nature and they are having many impurities in it. So that's why we call it as minerals. Okay, if they are having impurities, these minerals have to be purified. After extraction, the metals has to be purified. Okay, so that the minerals from which metals are extracted economically are called as ores. What we call it as ores. Okay, so let us learn about metallurgy. Our next topic of this chapter. What is metallurgy? It is the process of extraction of metal in pure form from the ores. The metals are further purified by different methods of purification. So different methods are you going to learn today. Which are the different methods of purification, and all this process is called as what? Metallurgy. Okay. So first of all, let us learn what is meant by concentration of ores. Okay. I'll share PPT with you for that. So students, so the metallurgy is nothing but the science and technology regarding what? Extraction of metals from the ores and the purification. Okay, that is what we are learning in this metallurgy. Now here, you can see in my PPT, what is shown over here? The Wilfley table method, first method. Before that, we have to do the concentration of ores, right? So basic principles of metallurgy you are studying now, step by step. First, you have to concentrate the ores. So process of separating gangue from ores, that is called as concentration of ores. So in this process, actually what is done? The concentration of the compound of the desired metal is increased. Now, how you can increase it? There are various ways of increasing it. And the exact way depends upon the property, physical property of the metal. Okay, present in the ore or in the gangue. Okay, gangue means what? The metal which is, what you can say, the unwanted things present in the metal. Okay, which is not needed. That is called gangue. Okay, so it also depends upon reaction of the metal. How the metal, how much reactive the metal is. Then only you can purify it. Okay, So there are very different facilities available. Various factors are there that are responsible, like pollution. Okay, environmental pollution also occurs. So due to that, okay, so some general methods are given for the concentration of ores. First is what? Separation based on gravitation. So in that, what is done? The heavy particles of ores can be separated from the light particles of gangue. So all the heavy particles can be separated. By which method? Gravitational method. The process to carry out this separation are Wilfley table method. So here you can see a Wilfley table method. So in this method of separation, Wilfley table is made by fixing narrow and thin wooden riffle on inclined surface. As shown the PPT, you can see the inclined surface, right? The table is kept vibrating continuously, and powdered ore obtained from lumps of the ore using ball mill is poured on the table. And a stream of water is also released from the upper side. Okay, you can see how the water flows from the upper side. There is an arrangement for the flow of water, powdered ore, and slits are there, vibrating table, and gangue is collected below. Page number 100 of your science textbook, you can see the label diagram. So as a result, what happens? Lighter gangue particles are carried away along with the flowing water, while the heavier particles, in which proportion of minerals is more and proportion of gangue is less, are blocked by the wooden riffles. So wooden riffles will not allow the minerals to flow down. Only the gangue will be flowing down, and they get collected on slits between them. Okay, so and that gangue is separated. So in this way you can do that is a gravitation first method by of separation based on gravitation. The second way is what? Hydraulic separation method. Now here what is done? The hydraulic separation method is based on the working of a mill. You might have visited the mill, no? So in the grinding mill, you can see there is a tapering vessel as shown in the PPT. Yes. So that is used. It opens like a tank. Okay, tank-like container is there, tapering on the lower side. The tank has an outlet for water on the upper side. Upper side, there is a small outlet shown in the diagram, and a water inlet is also there on the lower side. So both the inlet and outlet is provided in this apparatus, that is for hydraulic separation. And then what you have to do? Finely ground ore is released in the tank. Ground ore means what? Powdered ore. Okay, very fine powder of the ore is released into the tank, and a forceful gel of water is also introduced from the lower side. Okay, water should be flowing with a very high pressure from the lower side. Lower side, you can see a blue colored pipe. From there, forcefully the water should go inside this container, and gangue particles, you know, they are lighter, and therefore what they will do? They will flow out along with the water jet from the outlet on the upper side of the tank and get collected separately. So all the gangue will flow out because they are lighter and they are easily separated out of the water. So at the same time, what happens to the heavy particles which we need? The heavy particles of the ore that is collected at the bottom of the lower side of the tank. So at the bottom, you can see concentrated ore is separated. So all this ore is very useful, that is separated out. So in short, this method is based on the law of gravitation. You studied the law of gravitation in first chapter. Always a heavy things are attracted towards the earth. So that's why this concentrated ore is heavier. They will get attracted towards the lower part of the vessel, and the lighter particles will flow along with water and get separated. Okay, so these particles of the same size are separated by the weight with the help of water. That's why the name came as hydraulic separation method. Hydra means what? Water is used here. Okay, so that was the second method of separation based on gravitation. So I hope this much all of you understood. Okay. Now next we are using magnet. Okay, magnetic separation method. Now in my next PPT you can see the magnetic separation. Now in this method requires what? Electromagnetic machine is needed here. The main parts of the machine are what? Iron rollers and conveyor belt moving continuously around them. You can see the in the diagram page number 101, you can see how the arrangement of the apparatus is magnetic roller, how it looks like, and how the conveyor belt looks like, right? So the conveyor belt, what it does, it keeps on moving around the rollers and is non-magnetic in nature. That means what? It is made up of either brass or leather. Okay, and the powdered ore is poured on the conveyor belt near the non-magnetic roller, and two collector vessels are placed below the magnetic roller. Okay, so the particles of non-magnetic part in the ore are not attracted towards magnetic roller. Whatever non-magnetic things are there, no, that gets separated from magnetic things. So when powdered ore comes out, non-magnetic roller and magnetic roller will attract all the magnetic particles, and the non-magnetic particle or the ingredient gets collected in the separate collector. So in this way, you can separate out the magnetic and non-magnetic ingredients from each other. Okay, so then they are further carried out along the belt and fall in the collector vessel places in a way which is placed very little away from the magnetic roller. Okay. At the same time, particles of magnetic ingredients, what they will do, they will stick to the magnetic roller and fall in the collector vessel near the magnetic roller. So in this way, magnetic and non-magnetic ingredients can be separated very easily. Okay. For example, cassiterite. Cassiterite is a tin ore. Okay, and it contains many non-magnetic materials like stannic oxide is there, magnetic ingredient like ferrous tungstate is there. So these are separated by electromagnetic method. Okay? So stannic oxide is, what is the formula? SnO2. And what is the formula for ferrous tungstate? FeWO4. Okay, in which iron is there, tungsten is there, and oxygen is there. Okay? So these two are present in cassiterite. Okay, cassiterite is a ore, tin ore. It is a ore of tin which has magnetic ingredient as well as non-magnetic ingredient. So how you can separate this? By magnetic separation method. Next is what? Froth flotation method. Now in froth flotation method, what is done? The froth flotation method is based on two opposite properties, that is hydrophilic and hydrophobic of the particles. So here the particles of metal oxides, due to their hydrophobic property, gets wetted mainly with oil. Okay. While due to hydrophilic property, the gangue particles get wetted with water. So hydrophobic means what? The oil gets, so these particles, no, which get wet because of oil, they are having hydrophobic property. And if the particles are suppose getting wetted by water, we call it as hydrophilic property. So by these properties, what happens? Certain ores are concentrated by froth flotation method, right? So here in froth flotation method, page number 102 of your textbook, you can see the label diagram where you need agitator, air is supplied, bubbles, water and pine oil is taken inside the beaker. Okay, concentrated sulfide ore is separated, froth is coming, and gangue is separated. So that is froth flotation method. So first of all, how this method takes? In this method, what you have to take? First, ground the ore in very fine powder and put it in a big tank containing ample amount of water. So you can see in the diagram the tank, big tank, where it contains large quantity of water and certain vegetable oil like pine oil or eucalyptus oil, nilgiri oil, this all is available. That is also added in water. Why it is added? So that it forms a froth. Froth means what? Bubbles, right? And then pressurized air is blown through the water. So there is an agitator rotating around its axis in the center of the flotation tank. Okay, you can see agitator there in the middle that will keep on rotating. Agitator, what is the function? It will keep on rotating and it is used as per the requirement, as much bubbles. As soon as you rotate it, bubbles will be formed. Okay, agitator is used as per the requirement and bubbles are formed due to blown air. So due to agitation, a foam is formed from oil. Okay, you are having oil, water and air bubbles together coming. So a big foam will be formed due to agitating, and this foam will rise on the surface of the water and starts floating. Okay, that's why the name came as what? Froth flotation process. Again, I repeat, students, listen. What all are the three things we are using here? Oil, water and air bubbles. So all the three bubbles will come together when you are using the agitator and agitate the water. Oil bubbles, water bubbles, and air bubbles. Okay, they will form a big foam, and the foam will rise and float on the surface. So whatever particles are present of sulfide, they will easily float with the foam and on water, and they get separated, wetted by oil. For example, this method we can use for zinc blend and copper pyrite. Okay, concentration of zinc blend and copper pyrite. For that you can use it. What is the formula of zinc blend? ZnS. That is zinc sulfide. And copper pyrite means what? CuFeS2. Copper, iron and sulfur together form zinc pyrite. Sorry, copper pyrite. So I hope you understood how this method is used, right? So that is about the method. Now the last method is called leaching method. Okay. Now in leaching method, what is done? Leaching is what? The first step. Okay. First step in the extraction of the metal like aluminum, gold and silver. Okay. From the ores. In this method, ore is soaked in a particular solution for long time. You can take the ore, soak it in the solution for some time, and the ore will dissolve in that solution. Why it will dissolve? Because of chemical reaction taking place. And the gangue does not react. Okay, only the ore will react. So therefore, gangue does not dissolve in that solution, and we can easily separate the gangue. So this method is called leaching method. For example, if you're taking concentration of bauxite, aluminum ore is done by leaching method. Okay, so bauxite is soaked in aqueous sodium hydroxide. Okay, so what is formed? Sodium carbonate, or if you can take sodium carbonate or sodium hydroxide. What is happening here? It will dissolve in the main ingredient, that is alumina in it. Okay, so this means that what? Bauxite is leached by sodium hydroxide. Okay, so that this is how the leaching takes place. Now next is how to extract the aluminium. How extraction of aluminium takes place. Okay, so let us learn that now. So I hope all the different methods like leaching, hydraulic method, Wilfy table method, okay, magnetic separation method and froth flotation method, everything is very much clear to you students. So all these are the different methods of separation of gangue from the ore of the metal. Now we are going, after separation of all the, after purifying the ore, what is the next method? Extraction of ore. How to extract the ore from the, extract the metal from the ore. Okay. Now extraction of metals, how it takes place. Okay. So for that, let us move to that topic, that is extraction of metals. Now here, the extraction of highly reactive metal has to be done by electrolytic reduction. How you can do this? By electrolytic reduction. Okay. So electrolytic reduction means what? What is exactly done here? Now, the extraction of highly reactive metals, we have to take, for example, aluminium. What is the atomic number of aluminium? 13. Okay. And electronic configuration is 2, 8 and 3. So valency is what? 3. Okay, last orbit, how many electrons are there? 3 electrons. If you divide the 13 electrons in different orbits, what is the first orbit is having 2 electrons, second is having 8 electrons, and the third is having 3 electrons. So aluminum is extracted from the ore called as bauxite. What is the formula of bauxite? Al2O3H2O. Okay. So extraction of aluminum involves certain steps. Like first you have to concentrate the bauxite ore, that is called by Bayer's process. Then there is reduction of pure alumina and refining of the ore. Now how to concentrate? You have to take powdered bauxite that you have to heat with sodium hydroxide. Okay, at around 140 degrees Celsius or 150 degrees Celsius. You have to keep for 2 to 8 hours. Okay, in a digester. What you will find that aluminium oxide, Al2O3, it is amphoteric in nature. Okay, so it forms sodium aluminate, which is what? Water soluble. and iron oxide impurities will not dissolve in aqueous sodium hydroxide, and they're separated by filtration. Whereas silica will react with sodium. Okay, silica will react with sodium, and what is formed? Hydroxide is formed here. So, to form what? Soluble sodium silicate. So, NaAlO2 is hydrolyzed to form insoluble AlOH thrice by diluting it with water, and aluminum hydroxide precipitate is then filtered, dried, and calcinated by heating at 1000 degrees Celsius, and you will get pure alumina here. Now, next, electrolytic reduction of alumina is done. Okay, for that you need a steel tank with graphite lining. Electrolyte alumina is dissolved in crystallite. Okay, cryolite. Okay, and the cathode is what? Which is acting as the cathode? Graphite, that is carbon. Okay, carbon in the form of lining of the steel tank acts as cathode, and graphite rods act as the anode. Okay, both are dipped in the electrolyte called cryolite. What is the formula of cryolite? Na3Al(F6) and fluorspar. Fluorspar means what? Calcium fluoride, CF2. Both are added in the mixture, and the melting point is up to 1000 degrees Celsius. Okay, and what is the electrolysis product? In the cathode you will get aluminum metal, and in the anode you will get oxygen gas. Okay, and the extraction is completed here, right? And after the extraction, what is the next thing? You have to refine the metals. That is done by reduction process. Okay, so that this is how the electrolytic, what you can say, extraction of aluminium is done. Now you remember you had studied about corrosion. What happens exactly in corrosion, and how to avoid corrosion. So by coating with some substance on the metal surface, you can avoid the corrosion, right? So what you have to do here? So you can apply either paint or oil or grease or varnish the metal to prevent the corrosion. Understood? So corrosion of iron, if you want to do. So you can use different methods. There are galvanizing technique, tinning technique, electroplating, anodization, alloying. These are the various techniques by which you can prevent the corrosion. Okay. So the process of coating of thin layer of zinc or iron on steel. Okay. If you are using the thin layer of iron or zinc on tin, coating it with this layer, what you can say, it is galvanization. Okay, iron object, if you're dipping in molten zinc, a thin layer of zinc is formed all over the iron object. So shiny iron nails, pin, iron pipes, all this can be, are the different examples. In tinning, what is done? Coating of thin layer of tin, molten tin you have to coat on the copper or brass. That is called tinning. You know, cooking vessels are there. So these are having the cooking vessels of copper and brass. They get greenish coating due to corrosion. So what you can do, you can use this tinning method. Now anodization, in anodization, which technique you are using? Application by electrolysis method. That means what? Metals like copper, aluminium, these all are coated with strong layer of their oxides by the means of electrolysis. That means what? Thin film protects the metals from corrosion. Okay. So in this way, corrosion can, like kitchen articles is such as cooker. You are using pressure cooker. That is anodized pressure cooker. Okay. Anodized pans are available in which you can use this method of anodization. Then electroplating. And in electroplating, what is done? Electrolytic process of depositing less reactive metal, generally a superior metal like silver or chromium or nickel, over another metal. Okay? Two metals are mixed together. Silver plated spoon, gold plated jewelry. These are the examples of electroplating. Then last is alloying. So here in alloying you have studied already. Metal is mixed with non-metal. Two or more metals or metal and a non-metal. Okay, of definite proportion are taken. Physical properties of alloy are different from those of its constants. So alloy, why it is used? Because it is corrosion resistant. Okay, brass is made from copper and zinc. Copper and tin are used to make alloy called bronze. Stainless steel is used, which is made of iron, carbon, chromium. So these are the various examples of alloys. So that is what about alloying. So how many methods are there to prevent the corrosion? 5 methods are explained: galvanizing, tinning, anodization, electroplating, and alloying. So I hope the lesson we have completed almost all the parts of all the concepts of this chapter, and the time is up also. So I'm going to end the lecture. Okay, whatever evaluation cannot be done now, students, so we will be doing it in the revision lecture. Fine. So whatever your doubts, some students are asking some of the doubts in between, so that will be cleared later on. I hope